Hi, welcome to the Reboot Loading podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie. So on today's show, I have a very special guest. I'm very excited to talk to him. It's Robert Sheridan, aka Rob, which I will refer to him as. He's currently residing in Tennessee. He is very passionate about all things logistic and supply chain, so I'm interested in learning more about that passion, as well as an avid content creator. So hopefully we can get some intel into, what he's done in the past. And as of the recording today, he has been laid off for about 6 months. So I would like to welcome Rob Sheridan to the Reboot Loading podcast.
Hey. Thank you. I appreciate it. Love being here. Love what you're doing. This is amazing. So thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you about kind of what you've experienced so far. Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. 41, like you said, Nashville, Tennessee. Been here for several years. Content creation, absolutely. I mean, I've started out with Twitch. I've done a little bit of YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. It doesn't matter. I mean, I don't have like the biggest following in the world, but I have a sizable one that I feel happy about. It like 16,000 on TikTok, 7,000 on uh, Twitch, and like I think it's 26 or 27,000 on Facebook.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, it's fun, but it's also scary. It's also scary in the professional world when you're not doing that full time, but you also have a professional career. So kind of try to keep them separated, but yeah. And then, like you said, passion for supply chain and logistics. It's hard to explain. People that look at you like you're crazy, like you say you're passionate about this, and you get into interviews and people are like, so you say you're passionate, what does that mean? It's like, hey, I was raised by I had my stepfather, who I was around most of the time, worked for Thompson Consumer Electronics, and since a young age he would come home with these like questions of, hey, I keep having this issue, what do you guys think it is? And he would ask us kids, and most of my brothers and sisters got really bored really quick, but I was always like, let's find the problem. And it kind of developed as grew
Here you
older.
are.
And here I am. But yeah, I've been laid off since, oh God, is it 6 months now already? 7 months almost? Like
Just about. Yep.
it's been a minute, and it's been a struggle, but hey, that comes to an end on Monday. I got that position. I'm so happy and excited.
I'm
I
so
start
excited for you.
Monday.
I'm so
Uh,
excited for you. This is
um,
That was such great news because I was really rooting for you. I know kind of the struggles that you've gone through uh, throughout this process. I've been there also on the front line, so just really excited to hear about all the things, all the things. Yeah,
all the things. So we're excited to trauma bond today is what we're talking about.
pretty much, pretty much. I mean, it's not a surprise right now. Like the job market is absolutely insane. Are you comfortable in sharing like how many jobs you've applied to or
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
or interviews that you've gone on so far?
I think that I've made that pretty transparent on LinkedIn, so I have no problem doing that. I will honestly say there for the first 3 to 4 months, I probably applied to 10 jobs each and every business day.
Mm.
And like when I say applied to 10 jobs, that means that I was even logging into staffing agencies and applying to several different positions that they had in there. Interviews, I want to say that I'd have to look up the exact numbers, but I've had probably about anywhere from 20 to 30 first round interviews. I've had probably about 10 to 15 second round, a lot that went fourth round, had offers sent, offers rescinded, be due to
Wow.
reorgs that happened mid interview process. I've experienced it all, and then finally landed one. Actually, what was crazy is like at the time that I accepted my offer, I felt like I had three good offers that were going to come in at the same time. And I really wanted the one that actually reached out to me. And I'm so happy that they reached out first, because I was very transparent during that time with all of them, saying, I need to take something that comes at me.
Right, right.
So
And,
very
and
excited.
From what you said, you've been interviewing with them or at least in conversation with them for multiple months. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. It was a former colleague of mine that I worked with while I was at NFI. Reached out to me, said that they seen what was going on, and this was back in like October, November, and was like, "Hey, it's not anytime soon, but would like to get you in contact with the COO." They reached out to me, and then I had conversations with these individuals since November, December. And that's the great thing that I always respected about the company that I'm going with is that they were completely transparent during the entire time. Like, hey,
Yeah.
you're going to need to find other work. This is not going to happen until April to June. Like, we know when we're looking to have this position open up. This is what I loved about them. They were totally transparent, but the COO and the individuals involved wanted to have monthly touch bases. And then finally we got into late February and they're like, let's start this interview process. We want to get you going. We think we're going to need it sooner than later. And I was like, okay.
That's great because I know right now finding transparency in this job market is really difficult. And to
Oh,
have a company like that, you have to latch on because I'm working with like let's say a recruiter. I know that recruiters out there they're getting slammed and getting kind of bad raps. Some are better than others, but I find the ones that are the best are the ones that keep me in the loop with things
uh-huh.
and are constantly keeping me up to speed because that is something that's so rare because I'm seeing probably on a daily basis on LinkedIn posts about jobs not even responding back.
Oh,
I get it.
yeah.
There's thousands of applicants, but there's so much automation right now that there has to be a way to automate this process a little bit better, especially with a mid-sized company, I would say. I know that one thing that we've all kind of struggled with as well with the automation and the kind of AI that we're dealing with right now is the ATS.
Oh God,
So,
yes.
what is your experience so far with making sure your resume is compliant, tailoring your resume? I know I personally have, I think, 22 different versions of a resume right now. So,
It seems like that, don't it? Oh my God. I went with a resume that I had done myself and I felt very confident. It scanned very well because there are ATS like free scanning things, but I don't ever know if I can trust them. There's so much ambiguity what exactly goes on. And there's such an open market for people to just scam and rip people off. I've paid two people, I think, in the past to work on a resume and to sit down with me and kind of coach me just to have them poof. So I think that it's very important with word of mouth and versus the people that are just going to spam and flood your LinkedIn profile. There's even with recruiters, you can't. I can honestly say that on LinkedIn,
right.
I've probably had five different scam recruiters. I've had 16 countless eons of resume writers, right? And it doesn't
Oh,
matter
yeah.
if, and I too have like three or four different versions of my resume, two of which have been professionally paid for by people that I trust and that were recommended to me by others. It's very easy to spot something that's been plugged into ChatGPT and like they're giving an automated response. It's the way that it structures the amount of emoticons and whatnot because they're all using the same prompts and they're just plugging it in and throwing it out.
One thing that we're seeing a lot right now is you'll get a message on LinkedIn. It's like, okay, they look legit. And then they're like, okay, give me your info. Send them your email address, your resume, whatnot. And then it's radio silence for
Uh-huh.
ever. And then you try to follow back up. You're not getting any responses at that point. Somebody right now who is laid off trying to figure out this whole process, what would
Uh-huh.
be your biggest red flag that you can give as far as these types of scams?
The ones that I'm more worried about than anything are the actual job postings. So especially if you're on LinkedIn or if you're mainly on LinkedIn, Indeed, something like that, if they do not have a profile set up and they don't have a actual logo, they don't have anything there, and you just see a vague job description, and then you look at their job description and it's totally off from what the title is.
Yeah.
I seen a lot that said operations manager, and then you click in and it's literally just a review board, like you're going in and doing like product testing or like panels or something. And I'm like, that is not an operations manager. The other big red flag is when they're offering you a position at a company, a lot of times you're going to apply and they can seem very, very legit on the websites, but it's the emails that you have to look for. It's the emails that you have to look for. Like if it says recruiting at SIA, or if it says recruiting at Writer, or recruiting at, and it's all one word, like go check the domains, like real quick. You're going to tell that it's not very professional looking format when they send you the email. I got really duped 2 major times, and it was because they did all the right things. They did the Zoom meetings, everything else, but it got to the point to where they wanted, the big red flag for me, it was they wanted my personal address before I ever got an offer letter.
Wow. Yeah.
So they
I see that a
not
lot as well. Yep.
not a, and that's one of my biggest, like, give you a red flag that you want to look at. If they want any kind of bank information, they want any kind of personal address, even if they want my social security number, and I know that for a fact that if I have any inklings, like, okay, you want to do a background check and everything else like that, cool, you can do the background check pretty much after we have already established that, like, you're looking to do an offer. I am not willing to give, you're not legally obligated to give your social security number to anybody outside of like US government contracts and everything when they're considering you to check for clearances and stuff. But like, yeah, like you're not obligated to give anybody that information until they need it to do your taxes as a job.
Exactly.
Never be afraid if something sounds too good to be true, or if it sounds a little off, to reach out. So like one of the big ones that I had was SEAL Logistics. I had went through, this is how clever they were, an application process. I went through 2 phone interviews. I went through a Zoom interview, video interview, and then got through, and then they had me do a written interview. I did all of that, felt very professional. So we're talking like 4 stages here
Wow.
of like boom, 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 boom. And then we got to the last part and they're like, yeah, we want to offer you this, blah, 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 blah. We need your address. And then I was like, okay. And they're like, because we're going to send you a check to get your home office set up. And I was like, no,
No, no, no.
no,
Never
no,
do
no.
that. Never.
Clever, but not happening. Like,
And they're becoming more clever. We always
mhm.
have to stay 10 steps ahead just in talking about kind of like these red flags. I mean, it can look very intimidating right now going out there in the job market. I know that when we were laid off, I took some time afterwards to just kind of figure out, what am I doing? It's literally like the rug is pulled out from under you, and you're just looking around like, what do I do now? I've tried to build up my career. I've tried to pour my heart and soul into everything. And now what? So I spent a little bit of time just kind of self-reflecting, trying to figure out, what do I really want to do? Honestly, I'm still trying to figure that out. So here we are 6 months later, still trying to figure out, what is it that Stephanie wants? I have no idea. I know what I don't want. So I'm working on trying to figure out what I do want. The question I have for you is, let's say someone's listening right now and they've just been laid off. It's their first time, or maybe it's not their first time. Maybe it's their 10th time. What advice would you give, or what did you do for yourself to kind of just pull it all in and let it soak in for a minute?
One, I had to, one of the biggest things that I had to overcome before I could get my head on straight to sit there and move forward is to let it be what it was, and stop making excuses for the company that just let me go. I had to deprogram myself. And it's not that I want to speak bad about the company or anything. It's that I want to say that I felt very much like someone that had been through a traumatic experience and was trying to blame themselves as the victim. I really had it in my head. I had to accept what it was. I had it in my head that someone was going to reach out to me and be like, "We made a mistake," or
Just
this, that.
kidding.
Yeah, it was
I
like, how
feel you.
can you do this? How can you do this? I had to sit there and realize that it wasn't anything that I had done. And then I had to realize that since it wasn't something that I did wrong, that it was okay to sit there and move on and not worry how future employers might look at it. And that was the big hurdle with job hunting and looking for my next position. and not let that impact what I thought that I was worth. Because I found myself real quickly when I first got out, willing to step back nearly and at times more than a 50% pay cut from what I had previously been making, just because I had family. I was like, man, maybe I don't deserve this, that, and the other. And it took a little bit of like self reflection, and a lot of the stuff that I opened up and I did in my posts on LinkedIn really helped me work through that and get that support that I needed.
Yeah, and I'm glad you had that outlet because I think that's important. When we were laid off, I looked at like what happens after you get laid off mentally to someone. And it really is, you go through those stages of grief because it's a loss. It's a loss. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if you have a family, if you have kids, I mean, it's just, you're thinking, well, what's next? It almost feels like an avalanche of things that just start happening. And I really like that you said you just had to accept it for what it is. I'm going with the flow. Going with the flow
Are you
and
going to start belting out "I'm only human" soon?
I might just wait. If you stay here long
You're
enough,
good.
you might get it.
I'm here for it.
How did you handle the daunting task of filling out all of the online applications that ask you pretty much the same thing that's already on your resume, then some? How did you keep your sanity through all of this?
There is I use Google Chrome as my web browser. All
Okay.
right. So there is a plugin. I forget if I paid for a premium service for it or not, but I think the basic plugin works, and it's called Simplify Copilot Autofill.
Okay.
And it was suggested by several people that we know, but I had already played with it before, when I was filling out certain things, and so I went ahead and used that. So you can go in there and you can fill out a whole bunch of stuff, and just like when you're used to going in and plugging in your bank card information and stuff like that, it automatically fills it up and it starts filling out things. Second of all, I found out that I had, for every version of resume I have, there are two versions of it, and one's a very stripped down basic version, and another version is a very visually appealing version, and they both look the same. Just one is for uploading when I know that it's going to be scanned, and then it would be like, hey, do you want to attach your resume visually? And it's like, yeah, this is the one I want them to see. So the stripped down versions of my resume scanned a whole lot better into those
Right.
autofill. My fancy one looking one, I could do it in there and it would come back and be like, you have 2 years of experience. I was like, I have more than that just in the last position that I sat there and filled out. And like, there's like over 7 years of experience on my resume alone. But that's my Simplify Copilot is what it's called, and
Okay.
it was a lifesaver, a lifesaver.
That's good. I did try it out a little bit. I think I had already kind of dumbed down my resume to be just super plain. Well, in one of my 22 copies, I think I have a very just super line by line kind of thing.
Oh yes.
And the times that I did use the simplify, it did populate pretty well. Talking along the lines of the experience. When you have experience, which you do, in supply chain, in logistics, in everything that you've done, you go to apply for some of these jobs and you're getting overlooked because you don't have a degree. And there could be multiple
Mm-hmm.
reasons why you don't have a degree. It's not a requirement for most jobs. You can have experience in lieu of, but I know that one of the things that you were encountering, and I know a lot of people personally that have gone through this same issue, and even myself, I have a degree, but it's not in anything that I do. And I get asked that a lot on interviews, like, why are you doing this? Because I was going to go to med school. I was not going to work in tech. I was going to med school. I had my life figured out, at 21. That just did not happen. But of course, I always get asked the question of like, why? And I'm like, why does it matter? Why? I have 15 plus years of experience in what I do now. That should account for something. So tell me about your experience with having to kind of navigate that, especially in interviews. How was that for you kind of going through it? And do you have any advice for anyone that's in a similar situation?
This is one that actually gets real personal with me. And it was probably one of the biggest things for me to have to try to get over, and stop beating myself up, because it felt like the biggest hurdle that I had. But I'll be honest, while it it only felt like it to companies that are just looking to robot and mechanize everything.
Right, right.
Like every time I applied to a job, I felt more comfortable when they allowed me to select some college or something, or when they weren't looking for the exact specific degree or something, because
Mhm.
I attended IU for a year and a half, almost 2 years, like
Right,
before real life pulled me out. Every time it was going through that, or if I seen it or whatnot, they'd be like, needed, and it would say the degree, blah 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 blah, and then it would have comma or professional experience. But I still always felt as though, like, every time I wasn't checking that box, it was going straight to a garbage bin, because I would never get a response back from the majority of these individuals that I was applying to, or they would send me back auto responses and it made no sense. Like, we're looking
right,
for somebody
right,
with better qualifications. And I'm like, what better qualifications are you looking for? Like, seriously. And then I've had several recruiters that I've literally, and I think that it was what got my foot in the door for several of these interviews. And one of them is a big online brand that everybody knows and trusts. Several of their recruiters for several positions that they come at me with offer me the opportunity to apply for a job. Uh, and turn around, and when I fill out everything and I send it back, they're like, "Oh, sorry, I thought you had a degree, or we figured that with your job history and with the references that are on your LinkedIn profile that you had a degree. We see that it says Indiana University." And I was like, "Yeah, well, that's where I did attend college. I'm going to put it on there because I
right,
did go there.
right,
It says nothing on my profile that I graduated. I am completely transparent about that. Little do they know is, like, you're dealing with an ENTP who's got an attention for detail that calls things out. And I've literally gotten myself back into 3 interviews with 3 different recruiters because I'm like, actually, the job description says or experience, professional experience or experience in lieu of. It says 7 years or 5 years. I was like, and I've got that in spades. I was like, I've got that for you. And I've mentioned it here in this. I was like, so I find that when I encounter that, when I get a rejection because of that, and they're saying that, being polite gets me a lot further than being rude or confrontational. So
yeah.
I'll just respond back. And one in particular, it was for Amazon. I'll call it out. It was for Amazon. It was for a particular senior position. They had reached out to me. I had the recruiter say, "Yeah, sorry, we need an app. We need a degree." I literally used the snipping tool, snipped the job description that they sent me, sent it back, and I was like, "Hey, by the way, your job posting says that you're looking for the degree, experience, or," and then it's like, and then there's another comment and says professional experience. Not saying this to be confrontational, not trying to argue with you, not trying to. I was like, I just feel as though if that's what you're looking for, then there needs to be a little bit more transparency in the job posting. You might not have any kind of say over what that job posting is, but I just want to give you my feedback so that you can go get that corrected. I mean this in the utmost respect. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for the time and the consideration. All 3 of the individuals that I've sent that to, and I've done it in that way, have immediately responded back with "I'm sorry, I misread that. I'm sorry," because these recruiters aren't just dealing with this one job listing. They're
Right,
not just dealing with
yeah.
one person. They're used to seeing the main thing being filled out as the degree. And I've gotten into interviews for each one of the positions that I've, like, responded back. As long as you're respectful in that tone, I think it shows that you've got great problem solving skills. I think that it shows that you got a great attention to detail. And it's been a kind of an awkward conversation after that point, but yeah.
When you're in a position of being laid off, especially now, I mean, it seems like every day, every other day, you're hearing about another major layoff. We're not even hearing about like small ones that impact certain companies. When you're in that position, it's a very vulnerable position to be in, first and
Oh
foremost.
yeah.
So you're already in a position of doubting yourself because even if it is a larger layoff versus, just maybe a handful of people, I feel like it still hits the same
Mm-hmm.
as far as your confidence level will go down. It's like, why was I picked out of all these people? And why, you ask all the questions and you have no answers. Putting yourself in that position where you're putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I know how to do this job. I could do it better than anyone I know, because you don't check certain boxes or you don't have one thing that they may be looking for, it automatically disqualifies you. And I've seen a lot of times in a lot of postings, especially for women, they're more likely to not apply for something if we don't check all the boxes, if we don't have all the qualifications.
Mhm.
And I've seen a lot of postings saying, just apply. And I love those jobs that put that out there, because I think that's what we do when we're in those positions where we're vulnerable, we're already getting rejection after rejection. I mean, we're human beings. We're not designed to have that much rejection. When you're applying to hundreds of jobs and the ones that we do hear back from, it's always no, 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 or your qualifications didn't meet what we wanted. It takes a lot to keep your morale up. I think it's great that you actually were confident enough in yourself to say, hey, I can approach them. I could be a big person about this. I don't have to get angry about it. I mean, that says a lot about your character. It
Mhm.
says a lot about just the experience as a whole of just it's kind of humbling in a way when you're laid off like this. It's just you have to do a lot of self-reflecting, and it's really hard not to get angry. It's extremely hard not to get angry. And I know this firsthand. Like, I have my days where I'm just like, I just wish I never worked at that other place. I wish I never went there. Like, why wasn't I just happy where I was before? And you go through all of those emotions. But I think it's great that you went in with a level head. This is what it is. And I think a lot of people have to realize that sometimes you have to do that. You have to advocate for yourself. The most important thing right now, especially in this market. As we know now, I mean, it worked really well for you. You're starting a new position. What advice would you give to someone who's like, I'm about to give up because screw all of this. I don't want to do this anymore. I've had those days. So what advice do you have for me personally?
Leave no networking stone unturned. This market, I'm telling you right now, and I see it more often, that to get yourself pulled out of the trenches, you need a reference, a referral, a foot in the door, someone. Most of these positions that are out here, when you're spraying and praying and you're applying to all these different places and you're going through these interviews and you constantly see yourself, like I was and other people, getting to the last round, and you've got that quality about you, but somehow you're just not, you're always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Like, why is this happening to me? Like, why am I always the runner up? Why do I get to sit there and hold their participation trophy? Nine times out of 10, it's because they've got somebody that's referred them, or a referral or something. It's not that you're not suited for that position. It's not that you're not good for that. So leave no stone unturned. A lot of the interviews that I got, I can tell you, they were not from cold calling. They were not from cold interview placements. A lot of them came from referrals. And the reason I hadn't gotten set in a position sooner is I was not willing to compromise. So if you're willing to sit there and not compromise on yourself, you know what you're going to need in order to be happy. You know that there are other avenues in order to survive, such as I was doing Lyft. I still am doing Lyft, like driving, ride shares driving. I did a little DoorDash action too.
Okay.
But like I was able to do that, but it gave me the freedom to be able to interview when I wanted to interview for a position. Like I wasn't stuck going to somewhere, which I was finding it difficult, even finding something going in as a shipping clerk, because I was getting told on the opposite end I was overqualified. Like that,
I've heard that
it's
as
great.
well.
Don't be intimidated by the job posting. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a much simpler, more simplified version of whatever it is that you're reading. If they're going on and on and on about different things, don't worry about it. Don't be intimidated if you don't have a particular set of skills for software that is utilized, or programs that are being utilized. Like you know that you've used these programs. You haven't worked with SAP as a WMS software, but you've worked with Manhattan or you've worked with Red Prairie. Like, don't let the key indicator of what it is. You're going to have to learn it anyway. That's part of the training program.
Mhm.
Hardly ever does anybody expect anyone to hit the ground running. The only time that actually makes sense to me is when I'm looking at certain gigs that are contracted gigs. They're looking for someone to come in for 6 months to a year. They want them to hit the ground running. Implementations is a big one with that.
Yes.
Like I said, leave no network stone unturned. The position that I finally fell on was me reaching out to somebody that I hadn't worked with in 4 years. I did not leave that stone unturned. So those are my pieces of advice on that.
That's brilliant. The way that you explained it out is it's helpful for me being in a position of being laid off right now. So I'm very hopeful that it will be helpful for someone else listening. I feel like this can be a very lonely place, feel very
Mm-hmm.
just out of sorts because it is, like I said before, it's like a rug ripped out from under you. You're trying to find your bearings. I think what you said about leaving no networking stone unturned, it's been a little difficult for me being I'm an INFJ, so
Okay.
I am more introverted. I'm kind of like an introverted extrovert. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it.
No, no, no. That's perfect. I consider myself an extroverted introvert. So,
So I can be extroverted at times, but I'm just much more just afraid to kind of just jump out there and say, look, I haven't talked to this person in forever, but really in places like LinkedIn where the idea is networking, it shouldn't feel awkward to reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in a while. That's really what it's for. So it's not like other social media platforms where you make friends on there or whatever. It's literally for networking. So I love that you say that because if someone like me is listening that's more introverted and afraid to just throw themselves out there, this is not the time to do that. You just have to jump
oh,
in head first and go for it. Side hustles, they're amazing. They are
they're
amazing. They do give
great.
you that freedom. I love that you've been open about, you're out there doing Lyft. It's like unemployment doesn't pay much, and you
Oh,
cannot live off of
no.
this. Just realize that this is a really crappy place to be, but you're not alone. And that was my hope for this
Mhm.
podcast is just to kind of bring the reality to these situations and to talk to people who are going through it, who've been through it, firsthand experiences. I think it's important to make that connection with people and to have a good support system. That's kind of my advice there is make sure you have a good support system because you can feel like you're losing your mind sometimes. And it's good to have people to kind of bring you back. So hopefully this podcast will help do that for some people. Maybe it will be
Mhm.
kind of that space. That's my hope. That's my goal. We shall see. I do want to say I am so happy I got this opportunity to talk to you. And
Absolutely. Me too.
it's just it's been nice to hear kind of your perspective on things. I'm super happy for you that you are going to be starting your new job. The company that you're going to be working with is super lucky. I wish you nothing but the best. We want to see all the great things that you're going to continue to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited. I'm excited. Now we just have to fight the next battle, and that's imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. We'll get there.
You know what, Rob? We're going to do a follow-up with you in a few months to talk about how things are going and life after the layoff and now that you have a job. So I think that's
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful. I'd love that.
when the dust has settled. Thank you so much, Rob. I wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Oh, Stephanie, this has been an absolute pleasure. You're doing great things. I can't wait to keep following and seeing where this podcast goes. You're bound to do amazing stuff.
Thank you.